All right,
Hey.
tremendous. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Ray Mackay, Managing Director of aXcelerate, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to present the VELG seminar on our online competency-based assessment system. And as my co-presenter, I have Katie Mackay, who's one of our sales executives and has also been in customer success for many years and has had a vast amount of experience in not only supporting our clients, but helping our clients make the most of the systems that we're developing and implementing. So today what I'd like to do is, and what we'd like to do is cover a few different aspects of the whole assessment process. Well, first of all, I want to look at what's the typical system landscape and I guess the problems that are created by the complexity of all of the systems and processes and people associated with assessing students. We're also going to look just very briefly at what is the cost then of and the impact on RTOs of the whole assessment complexity problem. We're then going to step you through the solution that we've developed over the last couple of years, and Katie will take you through a number of different features that we've created that all work together in unison to create a unique solution for RTOs. And finally, we'll take you through a little bit of a sneak preview of our product roadmap and some of the features that we've got coming up over the next 6 months or so. All right, so just to jump in, I guess from our experience in working with RTOs over many, many years, one of the biggest problems that they have is in what I would call multiple system complexity. The more systems and the more people and the more processes that you add in order to achieve an outcome, the harder it is to create a quality outcome, the more variability you introduce into the system. And so from our experience in working with RTOs over 10 years, what we've found is, most RTOs will try to cobble, a whole range of different systems together. Like, for example, they might have an LMS to do online quizzes, but then they'll do observation checklists in a paper-based format. They'll have their student management system, which looks after compliance and reporting event miss and tracking units of competency, but then they might have a shared drive to be able to download documents and upload documents associated with RPL. Obviously, there's got to be emails used, shared documents, PDFs. Essentially, a whole range of complexity then starts to creep into the process to make it much more difficult to enable RTOs to be competent. So essentially what we decided was that this is going to be an area where we really need to help RTOs to develop a better solution. And so what we decided to do was do a market research and do a primary research with our clients, and we've got over 650 clients, so we have had a lot of input from our clients in helping us to get the online assessments feature to where it is today. But we've also had input from an ASQA auditor, from a variety of different consultants. We've also done a scan of the marketplace to see what competitors are doing, and also hearing from clients and also prospects what's working, what's not, and what are the key frustrations. We've also been interested in what the government has to say, and in particular ASQA, in their reviews, and what we found from our research is that, and this was actually some statistics that were taken from a review done 18 months ago, that found 71% of all RTOs fail to comply with the national standards for assessment upon their first audit. But then after given a period of rectification, a further 53% failed to achieve compliance of those standards. So we know it's a huge problem, and one of the things that ASQA has recently done, in fact earlier this year, March this year, ASQA, as part of their strategic planning for 2019 to 2021, identified a number of areas of concern against the standards for RTOs, and it's not surprising that in these key items, which I've lifted directly from that strategy paper, the majority of the issues actually center around assessments and assessment compliance. So we know that if we can help RTOs do this even 10 or 15 or 20% better than what they're doing at the moment, it's going to have a huge impact on the outcomes for our clients. So let's have a look at the cost to the industry and you know how much it costs. So in 2018, and this is some statistics that we took from ASQA, there are about 30 million unit enrolments around Australia. Now, if we said that there was, let's say, just 2 assessments per unit, that means that there would be over 60 million assessments happening per unit every year. Now, it's highly likely, though, that that number is north of 60 million because there's many RTOs that will actually conduct many more than just 2 assessments per unit. But if we looked at just a theory assessment and just a knowledge assessment, there's at least 60, but my feeling is it's probably closer to 100 million. The total cost per assessment, and this is a rough industry sort of estimate, is about $23 per assessment when you take into account all of the labor associated with the collation, the printing, the production, the conducting, the time it takes for marking, the verification, the quality assurance. All of those costs go into that figure. It really puts the cost, the total cost of assessment at least $1 billion a year. And so our goal is to have an impact on how RTOs can reduce the overall cost and improve the delivery of quality of their assessment to their students. So this is what we've come up with. We've got a number of elements to our solution that we've been developing over the last really 2.5 to 3 years now. A number of features that are unique in their own right, but when we bring them all together, it creates a unique solution that complements all of the other capability and functionality that exists within aXcelerate. So, and the main benefit, of course, is that it's all happening in one system. It means that event miscompliance, it means that quality management, enrollments, course progression, timetabling, all of those sorts of things, along with assessment, are being managed in the one system. So what we're going to do now is we're going to step through and we're going to provide just an overview, just if you like, just a little sample and a taste of some of the capabilities in each of these areas. Some of these areas we'll just talk to. We won't go into too much depth because of the time that we've got available. And what I will ask that as we go through, if you have any questions, if you wouldn't mind holding them to the end, we'll allow at least 10 minutes for questions. And there's lots of other information that we can send you, and there's information on our website if you're interested in finding out more about the solution. So what I'd like to do is hand over to Kate, who's just going to step you through some of the interesting parts of the solution that we've developed.
Thank you, Ray. And so what we might do, I will kind of have the slides up, but I will be jumping between aXcelerate and our slides. So I might actually just escape our slides, but I can talk to them still within this sort of view. And really, as Ray said, we have really tried to construct and build a feature that does enable our clients to just utilize the one system so that you're not dealing with masses of spreadsheets and separate systems that don't talk to one another. It's the #1 pain point that we deal with when we're talking to RTOs in the industry, particularly those that are wanting to move to a one system solution. So what I'm going to start with is assessment authoring, and I'm just going to open up my little first tab here, which really I just wanted to take you through how we go about creating assessment within aXcelerate. So within our, what we call our assessment mapping area, this is where we do both our assessment authoring, so the creation of assessment, as well as the actual mapping, which I will get into in just a second, or the fun mapping that I'm sure you're all eager to see. So in terms of authoring, I'm actually going to take you into assessment that I've already created. It's actually just an online quiz. And this is a good point to start with. You know, the different types of assessments that RTOs in the industry are actually having to work within, or the different, you know, variations there. So what we've done as kind of the first point of this tool is try to, in essence, create as many different types of assessments that are currently being undertaken by RTOs around Australia at the moment. So it might be something like an online quiz. It could be pre-learning for a practical. It might be as part of their full qual assessment, a theory-based assessment that they're having to complete online. This could be self-marking. It might be marked purely by the assessor if it's more of a short answer response or a written assessment. But then we get into other types of assessment like RPL evidence and the ability for students to actually upload all of their evidence into the one place. It could even be you know, assessment where they're downloading a project and they're completing that potentially offline and then resubmitting it that when they're ready or when it's due. And then finally, we've got our observation checklist assessments, which are obviously crucial for any qualifications where we're trying to assess a practical skill. So we have kept all of those in mind, and you do have the option to create all sorts of different types of assessments, but the one I'm going to drill into right now is an online quiz. And you can see here, one of my favorite things, it is pasta. It's all to do with pasta. So what we'll do is I will jump into the edit mode and just give you a quick idea of how we actually construct and how we build assessment, because we've tried to make it as easy as possible. So you can see here, I've actually only got 4 questions that make up this particular quiz, and this is an online quiz that our student would actually be going through the learner portal to complete. And we've got, within the type of assessment and online quiz, we've actually got different question types. So in terms of these different question types, this, as an example, is a single choice. So we want our students to watch this video, and then as part of, you know, the answers, there's only one correct that they need to select to actually get this answer correct or get this question correct. As we scroll down, we also have a slightly different type of question, which we refer to as a gap text. So if you've got different objects that you'd want your student labeling, or it could even be a paragraph of wording that you'd actually want them filling in a whole lot of gaps within the text, that again is something that you're able to do within this tool. We also have a similar example to our single choice, but it's more of a multiple choice. So it might be a checklist of different items that your students, you know, more than one correct answer that they need to make sure that they select. And then finally, we have an example of a short answer response, which is really one of these question types that does need to be marked by an assessor. This is not a self-marking question, but what you are able to do here as you're creating the question is actually provide a model answer for the trainer and the assessor to be able to look at while they're going through and actually marking the student's response. So in terms of the creation of the assessment, it's really as simple as just typing in the question. If you are wanting to embed videos, if you're wanting to embed images or photos, you can do all of that within our editing and our authoring tools as well. So that's just one example, and really whether it's an online quiz or whether it's an observation checklist where instead of questions it's items, they're all built in a very similar way, which is really lovely. The only other thing that I'll talk about on this page is that once you have gone through the hard yards of actually going through and just creating that assessment, possibly from a Word document that you might have already, or if you're moving an assessment or taking it from paper, it's really constructing it. We do have a preview option at the top here, and that's going to enable you to, first of all, preview the overview. So you've actually, I didn't even take you through this, but you do have the option with each assessment to actually provide a description and an overview for the student before they actually hit start on that quiz, to give them a little bit of an idea as to what they're going to cover off in the quiz that they're about to go through, and so on. As I go through, as you can see here, it's going to then enable me to go through every single question and give me an idea of what that's going to look like for each of our students going through it. So I will take you into the learner experience in just a second, but I just wanted to give you an idea as you're authoring, you can be checking as to what that is going to look like for your students. So the next little part of this puzzle, or this feature, is our Competency Framework Manager, as well as our assessment mapping. And I'm going to these do intertwine quite a lot, because our assessment mapping is really powered through our Competency Framework Manager, which you may have caught a quick glimpse at just a little bit earlier. So in terms of how all of this works, all of our mapping and so on, I'm going to jump back into this initial screen that I was on. And the way that we've laid this out is we've tried to make it as easy as possible to author, but then also to map as well. So what you're going to see in this particular screen is all of the assessments that have ever been created by your team. And then over the left-hand side, you're actually going to have a look at or be able to see all of the qualifications that you have on scope specifically. And as you can see here, I've got quite a range of different types of qualifications. And underneath every single one of these qualifications, you can actually see how many units we have sitting underneath them as well. One additional thing that we have on top of just the qualification and the units of competency is all of the elements, performance criteria, knowledge, evidence, assessment conditions, all of these sub-elements of an assessment, of a unit of competency, and all of those are pulled in from training.gov. So that alone is going to save you a heap of time in terms of not having to actually create from scratch all of your elements, all of the performance criteria, knowledge, evidence, and so on. So in terms of mapping, this is the fun part. So obviously out there in the RTO space, there's a lot of clients that we come across, or a lot of RTOs that we come across that do have very complicated mapping spreadsheets, and it is one of the number one non-compliances within ASCL audits is actually effective mapping and making sure that you've mapped effectively, you haven't overmapped, you haven't undermapped, and obviously a lot of RTOs have spreadsheets to be able to handle all of that. So what we've tried to do in this system is really eliminate the need to have this convoluted, complicated mapping spreadsheet, and instead be able to actually do all of your mapping in the system. So I've actually got a unit open in front of me here, and I have my quiz that I've just authored and I've just created. So what I can do, if I actually want to go through and create mapping relationships between the individual questions or items, it could be an RPL item that we want to map, or even
an observation checklist.
That's right. All that we need to do is drag and drop, and that's instantly created our mapping relationship. And if you've got one quiz question or one item that maps to multiple elements or performance criteria, or multiple units or multiple elements under multiple units, all you need to do is keep mapping and keep dragging and dropping. And you can drag the other way as well to create those mapping relationships as well. And the system also identifies, you can kind of see here as I drag and drop, you can kind of see that red. So if you are trying to do all of your mapping and you're trying to drag an individual quiz question across to one whole unit, it's actually not going to enable you to map to that level. So there's little helpful things in place so that you're actually mapping the right, assessments to the right elements within this mapping framework.
Yeah, and the other thing that you can do is once you've actually created a mapping relationship, by clicking on the little icon with a number in it, you can very quickly and easily identify which is the which is the element or which is the performance criteria that actually maps to.
That's right.
All it does is essentially applies a filter to all of the items or the elements or performance criteria, which you can then simply remove. Yeah.
Yeah, so the next part of all of this, obviously we can drag and drop and that's all great and fun, but obviously we then need to be able to review our mapping and actually have a look at what all of that mapping looks like after we've done all of our drag and dropping. So this does fall under the assessment mapping page as well. So I have actually just set up some mapping after we've gone through and created all those relationships, and I do have that sitting in this nice tab here. And this is actually an example of just a Cert 4 in training assessment, something that we are all very familiar with within the RTO space, this particular qualification. And what this is actually demonstrating or showing us is just one unit of competency under the Cert 4, so maintain training and assessment information. What it's actually demonstrating or showing us within this particular screen is where all of our online quiz questions, or particularly an RPL assessment, all of their items have actually been mapped against individual elements, individual performance criteria, and that's giving you that view in essence to be able to then demonstrate that you have created all of those mapping relationships. I guess what we have in mind with this particular page, and we have had some feedback from some of our clients, is that when you are audited, you're not always going to have an auditor that wants to jump into your system and actually work with you through, you know, the systems that you're in or the technology that you're working with, which is totally fine. Everyone's going to have sort of preferences as to how they want to go through that process. So we are actually creating, and what we've got part of our roadmap is actually to be able to export this whole page that I'm looking at right now. So
yeah,
that,
and it's also fair to say that there are some units of competency where an RTO will have maybe 6 or 7 different assessments and a lot of different mapping relationships going on. And so one of our goals is to make this page as user-friendly and compact as possible so that additional assessments can be added across the top, and so that a user can scroll to the right or scroll to the left and still see the mapping relationships from the questions or items across to the left, where the elements and performance criteria and assessment conditions and so forth live.
That's exactly right. So yeah, that's how a lot of our clients who are using this tool at the moment, this is how they're doing all of their assessment mapping. So just within that one little example, you can see how easy it is to just do the drag and dropping of those relationships, or creating those relationships, and then being able to review every single unit that you have then mapped. So what we might do is just jump back to our little
by the way, if you just jump back to the, I mean, one of the little thing which you can't do with a spreadsheet is the ability to be able to hover over a question and actually see what was that question one that we're saying maps to that element. And so that's this. I guess what we've done is we've tried to say, well, how can we take the solution that we've created to the next level beyond what you can do within a spreadsheet. And so we're continually looking for little ways in which we can, take things to the next level.
Absolutely. So what we might jump into very quickly now is the whole learner experience, and just giving you a little sense of, from a learner's point of view, what they're going to see, because in essence, if we can try and make it as simple as possible and as nice of an experience as possible for our learners, they're ultimately going to be much more satisfied and hopefully a lot happier doing their studies. It won't be such a pain for them, and they're enjoying their learning. So I'll just jump back to our little slides here. So the next one is talking about our learner portal. So I will jump into my third tab now, which is giving you a sense of what our learner portal looks like. So you can see here, this is actually our brand new learner portal. We have just completely given it a nice new makeover, and this is available to all of our clients now if they want to start using it. But really, we've tried to make the whole layout of this portal as simple as possible. So for me, I'm a learner. I'm enrolled into the Cert 2 in hospitality. So if I wanted to really, and I can have a look at how I'm progressing through my qualification, have a look at any announcements, e-learning or learning specific to this type of course, all my assessments, any sort of resources, and so on. But I won't take you through the whole demonstration of our learner portal, because in essence what I wanted to show you is that assessment that I've just gone through and authored. So if I jump into my little assessment to do, this is what a learner is going to see within their portal. So I have here that overview that I was describing earlier. So this is in essence going to enable learners to get a little bit of an idea of what they're about to go through. This, we've got some clients that will embed a video in the overview, so that if you want your trainer assessor or one of your assessors to actually describe what they're going to be tested on or what they're going to be assessed on before they start, you can do all of that as well.
Yeah, and you can also put a special image for that particular assessment, which will also then show as a thumbnail when you've got a whole lot of
exactly
assessments.
Right. So yeah, if I was smarter, I could have put a nice plate of pasta there, but that's okay. So in terms of actually progressing through my assessment, if I want to go through and start my assessment, this is in essence what I'm going to see as a student. So I can see that I'm on question 1 of 4. I can quickly jump to any of the quiz questions as I go through, and this is, as we spoke about a little earlier, an example of something that is completely self-marking. So we've already told the system that Italy is the correct answer. we can progress through to our next quiz question. This is an example of that gap text that I was showing you. So for me to get this question correct, I would have to basically label these pastas or these types of pastas in the right way or correctly. We've got another watch a video and then let us know, you know, what ingredients you're typically cooking pasta with and so on. And then from there, we've also got that example of a short answer response where we're asking the student to, you know, in essence, watch this video and then respond to the quiz question that we've asked them. So as I said a little earlier, the first three are completely self-marking, and we've got the final one, which is, you know, would need to be marked by an assessor. And I guess the idea behind that is that you can have a quiz that has, you know, it might even have a whole section that's multiple choice and then a full section that is purely for short answer responses that your assessor is going to have to mark. But hopefully with a little bit more self-marking, you know, you're going to save your assessor a lot of time in terms of, you know, all of that marking of assessment. Finally, one quick thing that I will mention is that if your quiz is fully self-marking and our student goes through and they complete all 20 questions or all 4 questions in here, they're going to get instant results in terms of whether they have passed the quiz or not, or whether they have in fact failed. If they have failed and they might have, you know, I don't know, got 1 or 2 questions wrong out of, say, a list of 20 or even 50 questions, depending on how big your quiz is, we do have a function called build on attempts, which is going to enable the learner to just redo the question or the multiple questions they got wrong instead of having to go through the entire assessment all over again to actually go through that whole quiz. That might be a little frustrating for them. So we do have that that particular feature as well. So as well as that, just to mention, this particular portal that I'm looking at right now is mobile friendly. So if your students are wanting to launch quizzes through their phone, they do have the option to do that right now through our portal. But the other thing that we are working on right now, which I might let Ray describe very quickly, is our learner app as well, which is really an online, offline, full-on Android, iPhone, iOS app that we're designing as well. We're in the midst of creating.
Yeah, and essentially what we're doing is building on the existing capability of the existing trainer assessor app, which we started developing about 3 years ago, and which many of our clients are using very successfully. It's great for mobile phones, but also for tablets as well. It's fantastic for trainers to access a whole range of different capabilities, course information, attendance, and so forth. And so then with the learner app, what we're doing is we're aiming to really enable the learner to be able to undertake their assessments in the app, but online, offline, as well as be able to access their course information, as well as be able to communicate with their assessor or their trainer directly, or send a message to their administrator. And a little bit later, we'll step you through some of the other aspects of the learner app development around work placements. Yeah. So yeah, that's the learner app. We're very excited about that. We're working on it actually as we speak.
That's right.
And we're planning to have our beta test version ready for starting to test in January of next year.
That's right.
Which is just around the corner.
It is very scary, almost Christmas.
Yeah.
So we've talked about, just a little recap, we've talked about the authoring, we've talked about assessment, I guess, mapping and all of the compliance aspects. We've looked at the student experience. We've shown you through obviously the learner portal. We've talked to the learner app slide about what we've got bubbling away under the surface. I guess from a trainer's point of view, in terms of all of that important marking, we actually have a trainer app that is available right now that we've got clients, a lot of trainers around Australia utilizing. So the app was really designed so that trainers out in the field or wherever they might be, they can actually have a look at their schedule. It's going to first of all tell them any sort of courses that they've got on and show them their calendar. But as well as that, when I actually drill into a specific course that I might be delivering today as a trainer assessor, it's going to first of all let me do things like mark attendance, have a look at where I need to be and so on, have a look at all my learners that are booked onto that course or within that timetable. But as well as that, it actually enables me to assess my students as well. So as a little example here, we actually have a first aid quiz, or it could be that the students are going through a CPR practical assessment. And so in essence, what we've done with this app is we've enabled trainers to drill into every different item that you would normally see in a paper-based checklist, and instead of going and ticking and flicking something that's sitting on a clipboard, actually have their phone or their tablet out and taking photos or videos of the student going through for evidence that they actually can do this particular skill.
Or recording verbal evidence.
Exactly.
It's audio.
Yeah. And so in essence, all of that, as Ray said, can be done offline, can be done online, which we'll talk about a little later on as well when we take you through a bit of a case study. But really, yeah, that's I guess in terms of the trainer app that we have, the way that trainers would actually mark, say, an observation checklist. Where we're managing an assessment or looking at an assessment that's not necessarily an observation checklist, but something that I may have just gone through online, like the pasta quiz, we have ways of basically being able to manage assessments both from an admin point of view, but also a trainer's point of view, as well as all of the important marking as well. So I will kind of talk about both of these in the same instance. So in terms of our management area, really what we've tried to do, and this is from both a administration point of view, but also from a trainer perspective as well. It's going to, I guess, from an administrator point of view, give you quick access to every single assessment, that you've created, that you have people enrolled in, and so on. It's going to give you an idea of how many classes of students you have that assessment actually exists against, how many students are enrolled. It's also going to enable you to quickly make slight changes to, if I drill into just this particular class here, and I want to go through and change the scheduling around this. So when is my due date for this assessment? Maybe I need to push it out because we've realized that we didn't factor in a public holiday or something like that. It actually allows us to edit the scheduling for a whole list of students in one go. Which I can show you now. So if I wanted to push out due dates and so on, I can do all of that in this particular tool. But in essence, it's really giving you quick access to jump in to go through and have a look at all of your marking.
And that was based on feedback where some RTOs said, look, we want the student to be able to start viewing the overview of the assessment. We actually don't want them to start actually undertaking the assessment until their unit of competency start date commences. Or we want to have the flexibility to be able to give them the ability to start the assessment 7 days before or whatever. So we've given them a very flexible way of being able to control not only the access dates when they can start looking at the assessment, but the due dates and the final date that they're able to access it as well.
That's exactly right, yeah. And we haven't really talked about plans yet, so that's very important to note, is that we've got this whole scheduling tool which enables you to very easily set up, as Ray said, when the overview is accessible, so maybe upon commencement of the course, but then when they can actually start, when it's due, when they no longer have access to that assessment as well. And all of those, even if you're factoring in rolling enrollments, if you're dealing with apprentices or trainees and so on, this will always default to your students' start and finish dates against their units of competency. So they might potentially all be different for each assessment. So flowing on to this, if I actually wanted to go through and mark, or have a look at the marking from a trainer's point of view, this is that view. So I'm actually looking at our quiz, the Introduction to PASTA, and this is the first screen that a trainer at a high level or as an overview is going to be able to have a look at in terms of all of their students within this particular assessment. So first of all, I can see, how many students have actually successfully or satisfactorily completed this assessment, as well as those that might need to reattempt because they were unsatisfactory, and also those that we might be waiting on because they simply haven't submitted yet at this stage. It's also going to give you an idea of when their latest submission was, who those people are that are actually within this class, within this this PASTA quiz. And it's also going to give you a little bit of an idea as to what is your highest performing question as well as your lowest performing question. So what are your students commonly getting incorrect, where we might need to put a little bit more, we might need to just make sure that that question is written in the best possible way for our students to understand it.
Yeah, and our plans for the future are to increase the focus on the analytics and what insights our clients can gain from the assessments that are being done, not just for this group, but for a whole cohort or for a whole population of students who are undertaking the same assessment or even the same question.
Yeah. Correct. So to give you a bit of an idea, if we do have, at this point, any students that need marking, we don't actually have any right now that have submitted that we need to mark. But to give you an idea, it's going to break those groupings of students down into those that we're awaiting submission from, but also those that we've actually finished the marking. And you can clearly see who those people are that have successfully or satisfactorily completed that assessment, and those that now need to attempt that assessment again. So something else that I didn't mention at the point of authoring your assessments is the fact that with every one of these different types of assessments, you can actually go and specify exactly how many attempts you're going to allow your students when they're going through these quizzes, as an example.
Yeah, and sometimes an attempt can also be an observation where a unit requires that, or an assessment requires that a student must be observed at least 3 times on 3 different occasions over maybe 3 different months, performing the same competency or the same skill to be able to deem them as satisfactory in that assessment and competent. Yeah.
That's right. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like for a trainer assessor, I'm just looking at Chris Andy, and I'm just looking at the 1 attempt for Chris Andy. So Chris's score was actually 83%, which was a satisfactory score for this type of assessment. So within our marking tool, the trainers and assessors are actually going to have the ability to go through, this is obviously something that is self-marking, but we can override that as a trainer. So if they didn't quite spell fettuccine the right way, we can actually go through, override to satisfactory, provide some feedback to the student at that question level, and then just make them aware that they actually got that correct, that they spelt it incorrectly. So you can see at every single question, we've actually got the option for a trainer to leave feedback, to upload additional evidence. So if we want to upload any sort of supporting evidence or files, we can do that, as well as any sort of notes that we might have. And you've got that both at the question level, but also at the overall attempt level as well, so that your trainer assessor is able to leave that crucial feedback for your student, and all of that is going to be visible and available to your learners within their learner portal as soon as this is marked.
Yeah, and the attempt notes, but also the question notes, are only viewable by administrators and by the assessors themselves, so it gives them the ability to be able to put those extra notes where it will be confidential, but maybe it's pertinent to this particular assessment process.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's in essence what I wanted to show you in terms of the marking aspects. Both, obviously, we talked to the trainer app in terms of the observation type assessing, but also obviously the marking area as well, and the sorts of functions that you have in here as well. So we might jump back to our slides. I'm just conscious of time as well. I've been talking and talking and talking. And just move on quickly to talk about reporting and analytics. So really with all of this is great. We've got our assessments, we've got our trainers fully utilizing it, and then marking, and our students are going through the portal and so on. But I guess in essence, we need to be able to report on all of that data, and also have ways to be able to tell how our trainers are going, how our students are going within their assessments, and so on. So to give you a little bit of an idea, those that are using aXcelerate at the moment might be familiar with the dashboard, which is the very first screen that you hit when you first log into aXcelerate. Everyone's dashboard is specific to their role and specific to them as well. So I might, as a trainer, actually have a chart on my dashboard, which is going to give me an idea of all of those people that might be now sitting as overdue in terms of their assessment. As a administrator or even a training manager or a trainer manager, it might be crucial to me to see by each of my trainers those who actually have overdue assessments, where they haven't actually marked something that has now been submitted by the student, where, maybe the load on that trainer is just too much, so they might need a little bit of help. As well as that, we have actually built purpose-built widgets for the dashboard as well, such as our online assessment widget. So as a trainer, we're going to have instant or be able to identify instantly who those particular or what those assessments are that now have been submitted, ready for me to mark. And it gives us a very quick way to jump straight into that assessment to actually start marking that as well, which is going to open up for me now. So that's just a little example of ways in which we can both report on all of this and have, you know, charts displaying for us, but as well as that, have widgets on our dashboard, which are going to make it a lot easier to see what we've got going on as well. Any other notes to say on reporting and analytics?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is going to be more and more valuable is the more and more insights that we can give clients in terms of not just I guess the logistics associated with assessments, you know, which students have completed, which students are overdue and so forth, and which trainers or assessors still need to mark submitted assessments and that sort of thing. But we also want to really drill down further and develop more capabilities around the learning analytics and, if you like, the assessment achievement analytics. So that's something that we're working on at the moment, and our plan is to roll out some new analytics capabilities in the new year in relation to that. As far as automation is concerned, we realized probably 7 or 8 years ago that automation was going to be a big thing, and so about 5 years ago we released our workflow automation engine, and we've continued to add to the capability and functionality of workflow automation with a whole range of different compliance related functions. And essentially what we've done with the assessment, the online assessments feature, is continued to leverage that capability to give RTOs flexibility around notifications and alerts and actions that can be performed automatically by aXcelerate based on certain conditions. So for example, it may be that if a student has successfully completed an RPL assessment, we can send them one type of email notification, but if they've completed a workplace observation associated with a particular assessor, they will receive a different type of template. So we've really tried to not only automate the common notifications and alerts and tasks that are associated with online assessments, but also to give RTOs more granular flexibility around how they can actually tailor those notifications and alerts to suit the context of the assessment.
So it's not just how you passed or how you failed, it's actually quite specific to the type of assessment that they've done or even the type of course that they're in. So what I'm going to do, I will hand over back to Ray. You've kind of taken over anyway, which is great, but I will just hit present so that you can kind of go through the other slides that we have.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we wanted to take you through was just a short case study, and this is an organisation, Paradigm Training, that offers Certificate 1 and Certificate 2 in maritime operations. They're based on the Gold Coast here in beautiful Queensland. They're based in Southport. And so they had some unique requirements around assessments because a lot of their assessment, at least their practical performance-based assessment, it actually happens out on the open sea. And so here's a picture of Ricky Burkett. He's the CEO of Paradigm Training. And he's using the online assessments tool on an iPad to step through a typical checklist, observation checklist assessment and all of the items with his crew. And what he's able to do is essentially take his students through and assess them in real time, but in an offline mode, because there's, you know, I think with some of his assessments, they're a long way out to sea, and so it's really given Ricky and I guess the whole Paradigm crew just a better way, a more efficient way of being able to not only conduct those offline assessments, but then be able to interact with their students in real time as they're actually conducting those assessments. And one of the things that Ricky's been doing is capturing lots of video evidence and lots of photos of their students actually performing the various skills while out on the water.
That's right, and as soon as that, that particular device connects back up to Wi-Fi, or they're within internet range, or whatever the case might be, all of those videos, all of those photos will flow straight back into aXcelerate within that marking area that we just took you into as well.
Yeah. So, so what we're starting to see is a huge range of benefit and cost savings, associated with an online assessment system that, essentially puts all of the tools and the capabilities in one place. And I'm not going to go through all of these items individually, but it's things like the duplication of entry by administrators. It's the slowness of response that is eliminated with assessors that have to mark assessments in the paper-based world. They're able to do it so much more quickly and easily on the online world. And of course, the faster that an assessor can actually assess something, the sooner that the student is actually getting the feedback about how they went in that assessment. And that's really the end game that we're trying to do, is really compress that time from the time that the assessment actually occurred to the time that the feedback and the result is actually known by the student, which is crucial. So really there's lots of benefits for the different stakeholders. For authors, really what we've tried to do is give them a tool that makes it so much easier to create those assessments, to update them, to reuse them, to duplicate them.
Version control, we didn't even talk about that.
Yep, version control, and of course the ability then to map to the framework and to be able to review easily how their assessments have mapped to the competency framework. For students, the end game is an amazing student experience, and so we're constantly pushing ourselves to help deliver a great solution to RTOs that they can be proud of in terms of delivering a great experience to their students, not only with course progression and accessing resources, but also being able to do that crucial piece of undertaking their assessments. For trainers and assessments, really the end game is to try to reduce the amount of time associated with the logistics, paper, the wasted time and going backwards and forwards between themselves and students, and all of the administrivia associated with assessments, and really just focus on spending more time spending that time with their students in delivering quality learning and assessment. For administration, there's lots and lots of time saving through duplication of effort, error correction, having to chase up assessors to see where is that extra piece of evidence, and so administrators then will have time to be able to do higher value activities rather than just do that lower level repetitive tasks, which really just add a huge cost burden to the RTO. And finally, for compliance managers, the ability to be able to demonstrate that they have been able to gather sufficient evidence, that the evidence is fair and authentic from their learners, from their students, and that they've got a complete audit trail. Because every single interaction, every single transaction, every single activity, every single submission associated with everything with the online assessment system is date and time stamped with a user. And so it really gives the compliance manager tremendous control and tremendous oversight of all of that auditability, and enable them to be so much more confident going in to that all-important annual or that audit whenever they have that audit. So yeah, the bottom line, I guess, is that we see a massive saving for individual RTOs, but also collectively. We believe that there's at least a 20% saving through the use of this type of integrated online competency-based assessment system for RTOs, and a huge potential saving for the industry. So let's have a quick look at the product roadmap, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So we're going to add the ability to also do some e-learning content authoring as well as assessment authoring. and really create some really rich e-learning capability. We're going to add some new question types, which I'm going to talk about very briefly in a moment. We're also adding item pools, the ability to create a question, but just then quickly add it to your pool of different questions. Some people refer to that as a question bank. We call it an item pool because it can be a question or an item if it's a checklist item. And the ability to be able to create clusters of learning activities and assessments that can address multiple different units, so that if you're an RTO that likes to actually deliver your learning content and curriculum on a clustered basis, you'll be able to do that. Also the ability to be able to create dependencies and prerequisites. So, okay, we want the student to complete learning activity 1 and learning activity 2 before they commence assessment number 1. We want students to be able to complete module 1 before they progress to module 2 and so forth. And of course, the work that we're doing on work-based learning and workplace assessments, which we see as key to rounding out this solution so that we can capture work-based assessment evidence as well as simulated evidence and knowledge evidence. So yeah, the ability to be able to, in the future, select e-learning activities and create learning content as well as just pure assessments. The new question types that we're adding to the existing question types include the hotspot question type, so the ability for the learner to be able to click on a particular image and identify a particular aspect of whether it's the handlebars or the pedals or the seat and so forth. The match question type, right? A student given several different images and several different labels to be able to match, drag and drop, match them correctly. The order question type, so put things in the correct order, which is obviously very beneficial for procedural type of assessments and knowledge. And then we've got our work placements. So this is a project that we're working on at the moment. This is actually a mock-up of the administration view of work placements, but in essence, a full work placements and work-based learning system to be able to assist administrators to be able to set up the work placements and then set up host employers to be able to also give host employers a supervisor app or an employer app so that they can also do things like mark attendance and that sort of thing. Also, this particular view is an example of being able to bring up a student, bring up their logbook, and basically look at some of the logbook activities that have been submitted by a particular student, in this case, Matthew Jones, and it may have been verified by John Smith, who's the supervisor. And so all of this is work that we're currently developing or features that we're currently developing and planning to roll out early in the new year for beta testing. So that's it, lots on the drawing board and lots that we've already delivered. So what we'd like to do now is open it up to any questions that you've got that we'll answer to the best of our ability. So
quite a few.
Right.
Okay.
So let's start from the beginning.
Where do we start? I'm trying to work out where the start is. And the other thing is, if we're not able to answer your questions right now, we will basically go through all of the questions afterwards, and we'll hopefully be able to go through and answer them for you. So. Okay.
So June Hansen.
Hi, June.
Yeah. Hi, June. So June has a question. She says, "Can you bring in Captivate e-learning projects to show as part of the course qualification and show the progress in aXcelerate?"
Absolutely.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. If you're creating, let's say you're creating a SCORM package, you're creating a piece of e-learning content that's been created using Captivate, which is an Adobe product, or it could be Storyline, which is from Articulate. You can actually publish that e-learning content and you can import that into aXcelerate as e-learning. So that's a big yes, June, you can do that.
But otherwise, June, the other thing that you could do, and where obviously as part of the roadmap where we're wanting to take our online assessments, is it not just being online assessments, but being a full authoring tool for e-learning content as well.
Yeah.
So we've also got a question, can we monitor the time students are taking to complete an assessment?
And this is from Anindita.
Sorry, we haven't said your name correctly. So any options to save as draft format. So yeah, one important thing, or one important aspect of the, I guess, online sort of written assessments or online quizzes or anything like that that the student might be going through in the learner portal, is the fact that they are actually able to save as they're going through. So if I get through 5 questions and then I decide I want a cup of tea and I don't really want to go back to my assessment and I want to exit it at that point, as long as I've hit save against each of those 5, which happens while you go through and submit, you know, each question, I can actually return to that, you know, tomorrow or in a week's time, and it'll actually then take me back to the place that I was up to as well. Yeah. Yes, Tony, the new learner portal layout is available now, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing about that question around monitoring the time it's taking to complete assessments, it will actually give the learner an idea of exactly when they did start and complete the assessment, and all of those, I guess, intricate sort of start and finish, or the time in terms of when it was submitted and all that sort of thing will
yeah, but in the future we are going to introduce some new analytics which will actually enable you to get drilled down to the question level and find out, well, how long was the student actually on a particular question, and then be able to compare that with how long other students stayed on the same question and so forth.
Absolutely.
So let's have another.
A lot of questions. I know that there's quite a few at the top here that we've just completely skipped over. Let's have a little look here.
Can we check plagiarism? Look, at the moment, that isn't a feature that we've got. We are looking into the potential to be able to integrate with Turnitin,
yeah.
Which is I guess the main plagiarism software tool on the market. So that's definitely on our product roadmap to look at.
Yeah. And Beck, with your question around completing offline, so any sort of students that aren't able to, for whatever reason, complete online, there is a printing, the ability to print an assessment, and it can actually be just a blank assessment for the student to go through and complete. It could be you're wanting to print it for an audit, so you've got the ability to actually print out the full completed marked up copy, but it could also be the trainer's version as well. So it might be that they just need to you know, take that into class with them so that they can
as a reference.
Yeah, as a reference as well.
Yeah.
So let's scroll up and see. Yes, I believe this is all being recorded, so everyone will be able to receive the recording of this. I'll just scroll up a little bit higher and see if I can jump into any. Let's have a little look here. Oh, goodness me, there's lots of questions. Sorry, guys. Let's go up, 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 up. Online learning, does the student sign off with using online signatures? I know that, I just picked this question because I know that there's a lot around signatures and ensuring that there's authenticity of the student actually going through the assessment themselves. We have signatures for both the trainer and the student within, say, an observation checklist style assessment, and all of that is sucked back into our authoring tool, our marking area once we've completed the assessment.
And that relates to the observation checklist style assessment, where the student is typically with the assessor.
That's right.
In real time while they're doing that.
That's right.
And that's available, that's being used right now by people using the Trainer Assessor app.
That's right. And I believe with our new app where we're introducing student
signatures. The Learner app.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So on the Learner app, the student will be able to sign off to say, yes, they actually completed that particular assessment.
That's exactly right. Does the system allow marking each assessment tasks as satisfactory and the entire unit as competent? Absolutely, yes. So units of competency, they're only ever going to, aXcelerate will only ever enable you to choose from the correct unit statuses. So all of the compliant unit statuses like competent, not yet competent, not yet started, all of that sort of thing. Assessments, on the other hand, you can choose to either say satisfactory, not satisfactory, which is obviously in RTO terms the very common way of saying that, you know, someone is deemed satisfactory in that assessment. However, you can actually change, you know, if you've got, say, one question or one item against an assessment, and you might want to say, you know, a form of marking criteria, maybe that the student was poor, they did, or maybe a fair job, a good job, very good, and then excellent. You've also got the ability to go through and create that sort of marking scale
that
as
rubric.
well. Yes.
Yep.
I believe that Scott, who is over at the VELG team, has actually got all of the questions potentially from the chat, so we might even be able to grab that and answer them all individually, because I think there has been quite a lot of questions, guys. I'm so sorry. Let's just, if I scroll all the way up here very quickly, I might just try and answer one more. The students, I just had a question around, will students need to log in to be able to go through and actually complete the assessments? Yes, so basically every single learner that you have will have a unique username and password. They will have to utilize that password to get into their portal, and that portal is going to be, it's purely just their information. So their unit progression, their courses, any of their resources, their assessments that they need to complete. There's also the ability for them to go and update their details, upload documents, and potentially anything else that you're wanting them to do. But yes, it is behind a username and password. Ooh, Scott has just updated. Any questions you would like to ask after the webinar, please email to webinar@VELG training. Yeah, so we are at 12:01 p.m, so we might have to park it there. I'm sorry to everyone that we weren't able to answer in terms of questions, but please do either get in contact with the webinar@VELG training, or if you're one of our clients and you want to just ask us directly, or feel free to get in touch with us as well. We're happy to help out.